Hello there. Welcome back to Neon Genesis Evangelion, reviewed by a guy who's actually read Genesis. Yay! Best series ever. This is the ultimate podcast. Am I allowed to call it a podcast? It's short. What is a podcast defined by? Is it defined by length? So I just got finished watching episode 6, or was it episode 7? So I just got finished watching episode 7 of Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Works of Man. This episode is interesting as it's the first episode to not have the focus on Shinji, but instead on Misato, though Shinji still plays a pretty important role in the episode. So, for the brief recap, basically it starts out with it's kind of establishing the daily routine of Shinji, Misato, and their penguin roommate. Misato is a slob, wakes up, and her very first thing every day is to drink beer and scream about how much she loves it. This is much to Shinji's annoyance. Shinji's then picked up by his friends, the videographer, and a bad boy, which, by the way, I know the names of at this point. I'm just not going to use them because you can't make me. And they go off to school. Now, this day in particular, a sort of career day, so we see that Misato ends up coming to their school, and Shinji's friends admire her, well, because they actually have a thing for her, and while Shinji's just like, oh, but she's so cringe. Hashtag cringe. We still use the word cringe in our modern culture, right? Cringe. We don't really see how the career day goes. Instead, we go over to see Shinji talking with Doctor Lady, which I could just call by her name because I actually know it now. I've actually been watching it enough. But the Doctor Lady explains to him that the second impact, which everyone has said was an asteroid striking the Earth, was instead actually something of an angel attack. And Nerve's work is to prevent what's supposedly a third impact. Another obviously devastating event. As a reminder, the second impact was their version of Noah's Ark, where the world got flooded, but this time it stayed flooded. And then we cut to the next day. We see the beginning of the routine, but instead waking up late and just shutting on beer, Misato is ready to go to a very important meeting, which surprises Shinji and has him very off-put. She ends this meeting in what turns out to be Old Tokyo, a very flooded area now. And apparently they established that yes, there is a Tokyo 2, which is currently in existence. So hey, that's interesting to learn. But that's weird. Like, what kind of culture would there be? Like, how would you deal with it? Like, let's say you're from like obviously we have like, York and New York type stuff. I mean, sure, there's that already. Imagine like you're just like let's say you're from Philadelphia, right? Or let's say like two new cities start, right? And so like Philadelphia 2 and Philadelphia 3. And you two just have to deal with each other. Like you're close by, it's just like, okay, this is what? Like what kind of culture would that affect? Would there be any kind of rivalry between the cities because of that? What culture would that affect just by having two towns named in such a way? Or two cities, I should say. That's a question for another time, I suppose. Maybe a fun story to write about one day. We'll see. Huh? We will see. But the episode continues with a bit of back and forth between the Doctor Lady and this scientist guy who's kind of this head official for this new company that's actually trying to, instead of using pilots and the less stable Ava units, is trying to use a new robot unit called Jet Alone. And the big gimmick is instead they have, not only is there no pilot, but it has an inbuilt nuclear reactor, which is something that the Doctor Lady quite disapproves of. After some fight between that, in which they continue to insult each other, eventually they get to the test, and the robot goes rogue, starts destroying the area, and the reactor is going to, well, blow, which will not be fun for anyone. Misato takes command of this situation, and after trying to get the codes to actually shut down the robot, and the buck constantly getting passed around, eventually she finally gets it and is able to contact Shinji, and the two of them drop down to dispatch the robot. She climbs inside to shut down the nuclear reactor while Shinji tries to slow it. After inputting the code, she realizes the code's useless. Completely useless. So she has to shut it down manually, much to Shinji's relief, though she's more concerned with the fact that it's clearly been tampered with. Closing in, the Doctor Lady confirms with Shinji's father that she'd done the mission and had indeed sabotaged the thing to make sure that Nerve was secure in their funding and their public trust. And that ends with the final repeat of their morning routine with, again, Misato just being a slob and happy with her beer before Shinji's friends pick him up. He's especially annoyed about it. And the two of them keep going on about how much they like her, while Shinji's trying to, like, just frustrated with. He's like, she's a total slob. It's so annoying. And then his friends are like, you're an idiot. And he's like, what? You're gonna see the stuff that no outsiders see. It, you dummy. That means your family. And then Shinji smiles at the realization. And that's where the episode ends. This seems to be kind of a middling episode in the arcs. Seems to be a setup for what I believe seems to be set up, or at least for some more of the themes going on. Again, similar Paradise Lost themes of how Shinji's father was actually, or the supposed god in here was actually a flawed being, and instead, perhaps like this rivalry with the wanting idols destroyed for those other nations' gods and hating them so passionately. Perhaps this is an interpretation of that idea of destroying those other gods, those other Evas, or those other mechas, so that you can only have the Evas. Maybe perhaps the Evas are instead a marriage of man's rebellion and worldly gods and their independence, instead of what I was thinking of, where it was just Eve, because Ava, Eve, you could see that there. So perhaps there's an entirely different idea in that sense of what my original theory was. However, I do feel vindicated in that idea that these characters are a bit more villainous, and I do find it interesting how the doctor lady is questionable. She seems fairly on Shinji's side, but she's willing to go to lengths that others would not consider. And of course, Shinji's father is still as much a jerk as ever. And this episode, interestingly enough, did not have Rei in it at any point. Now, I was mentioning earlier, I do believe that this is a bit of a setup for future arcs. So a couple things on that. First off, I feel this is very clearly establishing what Misato's character is like, as well as what her arc is going to be going forward. Perhaps some sort of investigation will be conducted throughout the rest of the series. Meanwhile, Shinji feel, being secure in his ability to trust her compared to the rest, which she's like, no. Their close bond, and this episode did note what's coming next episode is the arrival of another character, which I believe, since there's a big pilgrimage from one country to the other, similar to Abraham's pilgrimage, I believe that this perhaps is going to be the introduction of the Abraham arc, coming a little bit later than I probably would have expected. I would have expected it this episode, but again, we have our setup here, so it looks like we're kind of getting all our players into the positions we'd like, and then we can continue on, because once you get to Abraham, it's pretty quick to knock out kind of all the stuff going forward. You got Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, the story of Joseph, the migration of Israel and his children to Egypt. So this could very well be all the setup for that. So I can't decide if we're going to shoot through a lot of this very quick, because there's a lot of stories, but not many people it's happening to anymore. But since there's this amalgamation of it, and since there are that many stories, it could be stretched out further. I'm sorry, I hope that makes sense, but yeah, I'm just curious about where they're going to take the rest of the story of Genesis. This one has been very special to me, I'd say. Hopefully it turns out good. Again, I'm attached to the original incarnation, so hopefully this one lives up to it. But there's only one way to truly find out, isn't there? And that's, say it with me now, to watch the next episode. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's it for this one. We'll kind of work through things, hopefully make things a little clearer, better balance for you in the future. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. So thank you so much for watching. For anyone who indeed has gotten this far, watching or listening. Well, listening. This is audio only. Unless you're on YouTube, which I guess technically there's, going to be a still image, I guess. If you did enjoy, please go ahead and give it a like, whatever equivalent you have on this, on whatever platform you're using. Please go ahead and give me a follow or a subscription, again, depending on what platform you got that you're using to listen to this on. And go ahead and give me a comment if you can. Let me know what you think. Let me know your own personal theories, your thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, philosophical ideals. And this is G friggin' W, wishing you good night, good day, and good friggin' bye.